I believe we're live. Yes, we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast. I'm Dan D. Federicis of Saratoga Report. I'm here today with my co-host Adam Israel. Robin Dalton has a sick family member at home, and she will not be joining us today. Adam, you still enjoying this weather this week?
No, I like cold. I'm ready for fall. I'm ready to break my out. This is enough of this. Give me some cool air, and I'll be happy.
You'll get what you want in a matter of hours. I believe this beautiful week will come to an end, at least weather-wise, shortly. Hey, wow, things have been happening here, and let's acknowledge the most important thing happening that did happen was the 9-year-old girl that was kidnapped from Moreau State Park over the weekend, and everybody knows what we're talking about. We agreed ahead of time, even though her name has been blasted out there to the world at this point, then she was a lost child. Now she's a crime victim. So even though it's out there and we acknowledge that, the Times Union is not using her name. So we won't use her name. But Adam, you mentioned that family members do refer to her publicly as CS. So we can maybe refer to that. But the joy and elation, I did not think. I was all of us were, right? It's an obvious statement. Terribly worried that it was going to have a horrible ending. And there's still some things we don't know about. Obviously, it was a horrible ordeal for her and experience, but there's still joy that she was found alive and saved by some very brave police officers who busted down the door. Adam, you've got children. I've got children. To you on this.
Yeah. We're both fathers with daughters, but even parents, even anybody can empathize with what that family had to go through. It's every person's worst nightmare. We just were overjoyed when the little girl was found. John Gray, I think he reported from News Channel 13, had a great story or a great post or blog about how it really, for a little bit, brought us all together as humans, not left and right, black or white, but more just people who care about other people, and we're so happy that she got home, and everybody had some kind of connection to this family and this story, right? Either either you live close to the state park, or you live close to where the young lady was held, or you've been to Monroe with your kids and your kids have run around. It just seems like every parent has a connection. It made national news and it was all over the place, and then when they got her, I think you could feel the city just gasp in relief. So anyway, we're glad she's back. Dan, let me ask you, today's going to be kind of a short show, and I know this, but in hindsight, it's always 2020, but this is a question I've seen come up, and maybe you have a little insight, maybe you don't. But this man was caught by some great police work breaking down this ransom note he left at the house. Why was he not apprehended leaving that note at the house? Is that something, would they be guarding the house? Is that something that would really
I am gonna give you an answer that's probably unsatisfactory. The first part of it is I don't know, but I think we will know at some point. I don't know what the troopers plural orders were guarding that house. If they were, because it's possible if someone's putting I'm thinking it through. It's possible there were mistakes made. Well, let me acknowledge that, okay? But I don't know that, and it's possible that they had a plan. Like, for instance, if you stop the little neighbor putting in a note, goodness, I hope your young child is found. I pray for you every day. Just put a note in, and then the perpetrator is coming along, and you've accosted the first, or stopped the first person, not accosted, stopped the first person. So I don't know what the instructions were. We need to find that out. It is possible there were mistakes made. A lot of people believe they were made. I'm not there. I could be there, but I'm going to let the process play out and find out. The state police, I think, has been mum on this issue so far, as has the governor. It's certainly possible, but since I don't know, I'm not going to speculate. Well, I guess I did speculate, but I'm not going to speculate as to if they absolutely did wrong.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting scenario, right? Of you stop that car. Well, now you might have somebody, but now they know you have them, and you still don't know where that young girl is. So, so we'll wait to see on that. But anyway, we're glad she's home. Another big thing that's been going on is finally the trial with Daryl Mount. It's a civil trial. The family of Daryl Mount, his family is suing the city of Saratoga Springs, if I'm correct. Dan, you were there for opening arguments. What's your takeaway from the trial there?
Yeah, I spent all day Monday during jury selection, which was all day of questioning the large pool of jurors that came in, and they right in open court, of course, both attorneys, Steve Coffey for Daryl Mount's estate and Patty Jackson, his mother, questioned jurors, and he is a well-respected attorney in the Capital Region, knew his stuff. I tweeted out that he was uh, smooth and polished without being annoying. And John Asplin, who's defending for the city of Saratoga Springs, and the individual police officers that are still on the case. Some have been removed, but there's still some that are listed. He was equally adept at his craft. Let me acknowledge that first and foremost, this is a tragedy that Daryl Mount died. However, he died, that is a tragedy, and I don't want that to be lost in what I'm going to say next. But in the courtroom, seeing these two seasoned attorneys not go at it yet because they were merely questioning the jury and they were kind of being on their best behavior. They didn't want to turn the jury off as they were questioning them and get a negative vibe towards themselves. But it was very interesting to watch the two very accomplished at their craft attorneys questioning the jury on certain things and removing, some were admittedly biased one way, some were admittedly biased the other, and they were the early cuts, and what they have left is an 8-person jury, six-person jury with 2 alternates, 5 women, 3 no, I'm sorry, 5 men, 3 women, skews older, maybe 60 and above from what I could see. And so this will be interesting. The plaintiffs, Daryl Mount's mother and her attorneys, they have a tough task. That this is going to be very hard to prove for them. They have, in my view, very little evidence other than a hired doctor that's going to say what they want him to say. We'll see what happens. All the evidence seems to support that the police did not harm Daryl Mount. They chased him. He fell off a scaffolding. Obviously, I've got my bias. Let me acknowledge that here, but that's how I see it.
Dan, as an attorney, the preponderance of proof for a civil trial, which this is different than a criminal trial. So criminal is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. What do Daryl Mount's what's the standard that his attorney, his family's attorney, has to prove to find the Saratoga Police Department guilty of this act?
Any amount above 50%, right? 50.0001%, it would be a preponderance of the evidence. That is the standard. And you're right, Adam. On the criminal side, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is an extremely high standard, right? That's not difficult to achieve, but it's let's acknowledge that is a very high standard, as well it should be. That's our nation was founded on principles such as that. But a civil trial is very different. It's just over 50%. But I just don't know how they get there. I don't know how Daryl Mount's estate and Daryl Mount's mother and the attorneys get even to that level when they've got not only very little evidence themselves, but the defense has a lot of evidence on their side, including 2 bartenders that heard things that seem to side with the city's version of events. So this is going to be a tough case for the plaintiffs.
Saratoga Report did a great job of covering it, Dan. So thank you. All right,
thank you.
Moving on with City Hall, there was a city council meeting last night. Dan, I know you watched the whole thing. Do you have any takeaways?
I caught most of it at Tuesday night, right? I think it was Tuesday night that they had it. Open comment was consistent with what we've seen in open comment in the past. A lot of accusation from BLM members or supporters, attacks on Jim Montanino. I couldn't help but chuckle because one attacker, he's been called vicious, nasty things, and I'll leave it to the viewers to decide how true it was. But some of them I felt at times went overboard. And again, I'm not a fan of Jim Montanino's, but yet I thought some of the things that were said about him were just beyond vicious. But the other night, someone kept hacking at him, saying, you're old, Jim, you're old. And I couldn't help but get a chuckle out of that because of all the horrible things that were said to him before. And then this felt sort of like standard, but it really hurt. And but it was the open comment. There was a lot of that going on. Then there were some more things that were just of the issues of the day, having nothing to do with that. At the end, probably the biggest anticipated item was Jim Montanino was going to put in a motion to remove the requirement of so some people call the social justice part of the 50 plans of the police department, acknowledging things that some in the city say that's not true. Why should we acknowledge what's not true? So it was a controversial subject, and Jim Montanino, his last act and the last act of the city council that evening, he made a motion to rescind that the city would be required to do that. And he tried talking about it first. The mayor wouldn't let him. And parliamentary procedure, the mayor was probably right. You have to make the motion, get a second, then discussion. And as you might expect, Commissioner Montanino did not get a second for that issue, and the meeting quickly ended. But it ended on as they often do, on a very cold note. You could sense the whole city council against Jim Montanino, because the motion before that, or the issue before that Jim Montanino brought up, going back to the kidnapping. And Adam, you were very good on your What's Going On Saratoga Facebook page. You acknowledged Saratoga Springs police officer Kristen Van Wert. You got her picture there. And for those of you that I think most of you know this, but I'm going to mention why she was there. Actions she did 24 years ago as a dedicated police officer to make a DWI arrest, and then fingerprinted the suspect. That is the reason they were able to find out off the ransom note whose fingerprint it belonged to, because he didn't have, at least in the databases they were checking, he didn't have any other fingerprintable offenses that they could get, or at least not quickly. And someone might say, well, big deal, it was her job. You know what, folks? I was a state trooper for 23 years, and just like in any job, you get your all-stars, you get your people that are down the middle, and then you get your slugs, right? And she was not a slug, right? She worked hard. Working, DWI arrest. First of all, you might have to fight with a person. It's the middle of the night. They're drunk. They cause you problems. They vomit on you. Then you gotta go through the long process. There were some cops that didn't do it. They were lazy. They were scared. Whatever. Now that shouldn't be, but that's the reality. They're human, right? She is a damn good cop in my book. Good for her for being acknowledged. She arguably, by her actions 24 years ago, saved that little girl. Hats off to Officer Kristen Van Wert, who is a 32-year veteran, as I understand it, and I believe her mother was a police officer in Saratoga Springs Police Department as well. The Gazette has a nice article about her in today's issue.
Yeah, I think it's great to catch people doing good, and she certainly did good, and it was her attention to detail and to policy and procedure that led to this girl, like you said, ultimately being freed. So I was very happy to hear that and to celebrate her and to celebrate our police, because really our police force right now, like we talked about, this trial of Darryl Mount, they're essentially being accused of murder. And our police chief, who everybody I've talked to, and I've met him before, he is a by-the-book stand-up gentleman. He is being accused of murder, essentially. This is serious stuff. And like you said, our police force is also, being asked to say that they've been racist in the past. And Jim Montanino tried to expunge that. I'm not saying our police have always been perfect, right? But the problem is this pendulum has swung so far past what the past transgressions into baseless accusations. And right now they're facing, being called racist, being called a murderer are two pretty horrific things. So really happy to point out and catch our police department doing something good. So I was happy to do whatever I could to promote that young lady and her actions that saved the CS from that horrible experience. So
I'm glad you mentioned something, Adam, because you and I both lean conservative, at least in some areas. And I'm not one of these ex-cops that says there's been no racism in policing. It has been there. I started in 1987, so I had some old timers with me that worked in the 50s and 60s. And the ones I worked with, it was not pervasive, but I saw it there. It wasn't a shock in 1987 to hear some awful racist language in the locker room. And shameful. It's shameful that policing has that history to some degree. A lot of us will disagree at what level it is, but I acknowledge it's been there. But I don't see it. And I'll acknowledge, okay, I'm a white person, but I can still spot racism, right? I'm acknowledging when it happened in a part of my career. This Daryl Mount case, I absolutely don't believe one bit that they had anything to do other than chasing him, which they were chasing him for an offense that they had witnessed committed. I believe his actions caused him to fall or jump or run off that scaffolding that he didn't see because it was dark and he was running fast. I support this police department. I think we've got an excellent, like you said, not perfect police department, but an excellent police department that I've not seen any signs of racism at all. So that's my piece. Oh, but back to the Officer Kristen Van Wert. So Commissioner Montanino was praising her and talking about it. Now, let me say, I wasn't watching the video. I was listening to it because this is 9:30 at night probably. And I'm, we do this. This is a labor of love. We've never monetized this. We may someday, but we don't. So we fit this stuff in when we can. And it's a lot of prep and research. So I wasn't watching it, but when he brought that up, still with the elation that they found the girl the day before, this is just 24 hours removed from them finding her. I didn't hear anything from the rest of the city council acknowledging what he said, and and maybe they were nodding and I didn't see it. Maybe there was positive vibes visually that I didn't see, but I didn't hear anything, and that bothered me. That if I were to have it, I'm not going to make it my jeer, but that bothered me. That can't they put their differences aside for 30 seconds with Jim Montanino and jointly honor Kristen Van Wert, the Officer Kristen Van Wert, for such a crucial part of this case. And again, I'm qualifying that. If I missed something, if something was done by other city council members, and I've criticized some of these city council members. I've been big supporters of some of these city council members, and I'm still there. But if none of the four of them could find it in their abilities to somehow affirm what Commissioner Montanino said that evening, shame on them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I picked up at our city council meeting. It was the budget was presented by the Commissioner of Finance, and taxes are going to be raised again, the second time in 2 years. But what Commissioner Shangley did, and I just I like a lot of her, but she sometimes is incredibly cringy when she goes on the attack, and she went on the attack in this very, very just makes you feel gross kind of ways, where she was implying that we had to raise taxes because of the past administration's actions, and which again, the past administration had these BLM protests that were shutting down our street. So this is they were reacting to those. This is something that should not be affecting our taxes now, nor does the dollar amount big enough. She tried to make it sound like she really went on the attack about the Department of Public Safety, which again, there's a lot of overtime there, and that point she brought up was a valid point that was lost in the way she brought it up. And she said how she really criticized the Department of Public Safety for investing in technology instead of more police officers, instead of good union police officers, which was just came off as pandering to the union. Yes, we are all in favor of union jobs, but you have to supplement union jobs with technology, especially in policing. Come on, I mean, this is the technology is if that can solve a crime, we got to replace the job to solve crimes. I'm sorry to all the union brothers and sisters out there, but investing in technology is very important in public safety. So that was my big takeaway. It's still got to be voted on by the city council. We're going to have Commissioner of Finance, or the ex-Commissioner of Finance for 10 years, Michelle Madigan, on. She's going to talk us through a little bit about what she thinks of the budget, and it's interesting. But what I picked up on is taxes going up again, and if you sense a little annoyance in my voice, it's because when we were running for this position, she did not say, I'm going to raise taxes 2 years in a row, and quite the opposite. She said she would not raise taxes. So it's a little bit of annoyance, but hey, that's politics. I'll get over it. But also, I just the cringy way she goes on the attack and tries to blame past administrations or our police force for investing in technology just came off bad. But we'll talk more budget at another meeting.
I agree with you on that, Adam, and I'm a fan of Commissioner Sungvi. I always get her name wrong. Sangvi?
Shangvi.
Sungvi. I'm a fan of hers, but I didn't like that either because, folks, it was very numbers oriented, budget oriented, almost like and it was kind of boring, even though it was important stuff. It was very, it was just the numbers. But then she shifted when she got to public safety and got political. I felt anyway, and indirectly criticized, maybe directly, depending on how you look at it. But it wasn't a full force attack or anything like that. But it was critical, and pointing out, and differentiating the public safety department, essentially Jim Montanino, who they all seem to hate. And I've said this before on here. Listen, I'm not the biggest fan of him either, but he is currently the commissioner of public safety, and he's on the city council. So again, apparently I'm naive because it doesn't happen in Congress, it doesn't happen in the state Senate or Assembly, but I would expect some work for the common good. That, well, you were elected, Jim, you're sitting there. I don't like you, but I'm going to work with you. And I guess in the harshest way, they do work with it, or in certain ways, they do work with him. They did approve his amendments, but if you recall his amendments for the fire department, quick aside, a speaker got up and said, "Hey, that fire department looks complete to me, yet it's sitting empty. What gives?" And maybe there, and Commissioner Montanino did indirectly answer him later, but it was a valid question, I thought, because it sure looks complete to me as well. And maybe it's just my ignorance of the process. I know there has to be, there's things on the inside that have to be done, and a lot of laws have to be followed, and union contracts and things like that. But it does seem like it should be ready to go soon enough, and it's not. Anyway, I went off on a tangent there, but I agreed with your original point.
Yeah.
You had one or two other issues. Wow, we're getting through this in a hurry. Which is good. You had one or two other issues you quickly wanted to go through.
Yeah, a couple things. So there were a couple stories in the Times Union, and one WAMC did a story, and all. The Times Union ones. The first one was again. This was Wendy Libator in her absolute just most pathetic way, carrying the Democratic committee's water. Ran a story that Michelle Madigan, Gordon Boyd, who's part of the Democratic committee machine here, accused Michelle Madigan of betraying the public's trust by sending group email to city council employees. And it's the fact that this is a story blows my mind because the headline reads Michelle Madigan is accused of betraying the public trust. But by sending out, I tell you, every campaign everywhere sends out mass emails. You don't want to be on the list, unsubscribe. How the connection is that she is betraying the city's trust by sending it to people at City Hall. And she even apologized. She said, I didn't know these people were on this list. We won't send it to them next time. I don't think the people had an issue with it. It's just spam email, just unsubscribe. But the fact that Gordon made a deal just kind of shows you what kind of person he is. And the fact that the Times Union actually made a story out of this is just absolutely nonsense. The next interesting story was apparently there was a FOIL request for Chief Crooks's cell phone back in 2001, was it? When around the time of who knows when the FOIL request was for, but
2021, yes.
Yeah, some text messages came out from some past city officials, our own Robert Dahl included, from the protest. I just want to say it showed a couple things, right? It showed Chief Crooks was the consummate professional in every one of his interactions, right? It showed Mayor Kelly and Robin maybe didn't handle themselves in the most professional manner, but you got to remember they were getting and I'll be quick here, Dan, and I know I'm kind of defending but they went to city council meetings every 2 weeks and gotten completely berated by this BLM crew. I mean, just horrendous, horrible stuff. This BLM crew was shutting down our streets. They were blocking our traffic. They were attacking our commerce and our businesses. So this was a very emotional time. And what you saw was text from some emotional people. And I think that's okay to be emotional. I think they probably used language they didn't like. We can ask Robin about it last time, but I just wanted to quickly point that out that I do see a story in, even though it happened 2 years ago and it's two officials that aren't officials anymore. But I think it's excusable. But I just wanted to talk about those couple things. But with that, Dan, I know you gotta get going, so I'm gonna skip my cheering here. If you have one you wanted to throw out real quick, and then we'll. Okay.
Mine was part of the context. I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but certainly I want to say it again. Officer Kristen Van Wert, for everything we discussed earlier, that is my cheer, and I won't have a jeer this week.
All right. Well, until next week.
Well, wait, I thought you had one. No, I thought you had a cheer and a jeer yourself. Oh, okay. Yes, thanks, Adam, for all that. Thank you.
I'm out.
Okay. Take care, folks. Thanks for watching.